680 College staff is live all afternoon, bringing you up-to-the-minute scores and breakdowns of all the biggest action on the biggest college football station in the country, The Fan, 680 and 93.7 FM.
Good Saturday afternoon, 4:42 is the time on the clock. It's time for College Game Day live from Sports and Social here in the Battery, Atlanta. Whole team Brandon Leak from the Sports X, Carlos Medina, Sean Nerney. We are here until 6 o'clock. Get on the phone, 404-231-1680. Sound off if you're a Georgia fan or a Jacket fan, as that game is now in the books, part of the tradition that happens this time of year as Georgia wins 52-7. We'll get through that game and the other games of note. Gentlemen, how you doing this fine Saturday afternoon?
I'll start with this. It's a W for Georgia, 52-7.
Right.
Obviously, there are some concerns with this win, but if you are a Tech fan, you get to take what I would say from about the second quarter to the early part of the third quarter and say, you know what? I got a good coach. I hung in the ball game for as long as I possibly could.
Yeah, I mean, kind of a tale of two halves for UGA today. They started out in the first half, really couldn't have looked much worse than they did. I mean, they got up 17 to 3 or 17 to 7 at one point, and that's how the half ended. But, you know, obviously the half ending with a missed field goal, you had a couple fumbles, and really the passing game. And I'll go back to the very first drive for UGA, and they come out and throw the ball 3 straight times. They have to punt, and it was just kind of an interesting beginning to the game called by James Coley.
Yeah, you look at what happened. I think Georgia Tech, and Nerney, we've talked about this throughout the course of the season. You have to take advantage of miscues by the other team. When your defense gets an interception, when you find a way to get good field position, when you get something that works in your favor on special teams, you have to score, whether it's a touchdown or a field goal. And I think Georgia Tech missed some opportunities early. Quez Jackson dropped a pick 6 on Jake Fromm's first pass of the day. And Jake Fromm off today. Now, you say he's off, but he threw 4 touchdown passes. His team scored 52 points.
First half he was off.
Which is what Georgia does. They win ugly. That being said, the chance for Georgia Tech to stay in this game, be in this game at halftime, a drop pick 6 potentially, a missed field goal, no points off of a recovered onside kick and a fumble. And now you find yourself at the mercy of attrition with the Georgia offensive line.
Yeah, I mean, listen, you knew it was going to be tough sledding. Georgia's, they're just dominant up front when you compare. Just look at the weight, comparisons between UGA's defensive line and what Georgia Tech. I think they've got average a weight of like 270 on the offensive line for Georgia Tech, and you're going up against some hefty guys for UGA. And really, that's what you saw. The first half, Jordan Mason was able to get a few yards here and there, but Georgia's defensive line never really let Georgia Tech get anything going offensively. The only time Georgia Tech is able to get points is when they come out after the muff punt, have a short field, and they are able to get in the end zone there. But other than that, I got to say it was a little disappointing to see UGA be that ineffective on offense.
84 rushing yards for Auburn. That is the most they've given up in about the past 7-8 games. Georgia's MO is going to be the same thing. The offense is the offense. They're going to play ugly football. That's how that's going to go. Defensively, it's control the run with the front 4. Do not commit that much to it. And then 2 deep safeties to make it very difficult for you to throw the football. What Georgia Tech was dealing with is the same thing that A&M was dealing with, and to a certain extent, Florida, and to a lesser extent, Auburn. Eventually, these teams just gave up on running the football because it is not an effective way to beat Georgia.
At one point, Jake Fromm was 8 of 18 in this ball game. He finishes 14 of 29, 254 yards and 4 touchdowns. I thought Georgia, a little bit too early, tried to treat this like a practice and started working on some things. Their first 3 plays, passing plays, don't even try to get a first down and get up 7-0 quickly, and it almost backfired. Again, if Quez Jackson's able to get his hands on Fromm's first pass and goes to the house, now all of a sudden you're in a ball game.
Well, listen, when I did our segment for YouTube with Joe Ham earlier this week, Talking Tech, home team, you're a part of that as well. I said that the best outcome for an early game plan for UGA, if you're Georgia Tech, you're hoping they come out and try to throw the football. Okay, because your strength is not in the front 7 of your defensive unit. Your strength is in the secondary. You got guys in the secondary. Now, I'll say this. Tariq Carpenter scratched right before kickoff. He's one of your top players in the secondary, so not a good start for Georgia Tech. They were undermanned going into this game. But if you were defensive coordinator Georgia Tech, you hope Jake Fromm comes out throwing the football. And I think you're right. I think James Coley got a little too cute that first series, wanted to practice a couple things, and whatever his game plan was, it ended up working in the second half when you saw Jake Fromm come out and hit that back shoulder.
The crazy part, too, Georgia's running backs have lost one ball to a fumble all year long. You had 2 from DeAndre Swift.
Right.
Obviously, those 2 plays, one of them he gets hurt on, the other one's a turnover that allows for Georgia Tech to get some life. And then picking up the onside kick, the surprise onside, where 2 different Georgia players had a shot at it, but it fell right over into Georgia Tech. Better teams will take advantage of that thing. I look at this from a Tech standpoint and just say, my coach wildly outmanned, because that's when you saw the difference in the size of these teams.
Oh, no question.
Georgia got off the bus saying we can do what we want to do. Georgia Tech hung around. It was a 10-point game as you went to halftime before Georgia really hit the throttle and left Tech obviously behind.
And for Georgia, who finished up the regular season at 11-1, they go on to the SEC championship game, and they go on, with a 52-7 win, which should be – everybody should feel really good about that. But now, Jake Fromm, will there be questions because he didn't look as sharp as people thought he should have against the Georgia Tech defense? DeAndre Swift leaves the game in the third quarter with a shoulder, it looks like a shoulder injury. And then I don't know what George Pickens was doing as he gets into a fight in the third quarter and is ejected from the game for throwing a punch. So it could be the case, worst case scenario. Lawrence Cager already out this game and next week in the SEC championship game with an ankle injury. You could be down DeAndre Swift with his shoulder or whatever's going on, and you could be down George Pickens because he threw a punch in the final season or the final game of the regular season.
Good news and bad news. The bad news is if DeAndre Swift, by the way, that was going to be his last carry of the ball game anyway.
Right.
Him coming out, we'll hear about it throughout the week as far as the severity of the injury. It's no big deal, whatever. But this could be a Kerryon Johnson deal from 2 years ago where Kerryon Johnson was dominant against Georgia, gets banged up, plays the SEC championship game, and he is not Kerryon Johnson, the SEC's leading rusher during that time. The good news for Georgia, you have a defense right now that's giving up less than 10 points per game. It should be sitting right around 9 after this thing. So when you start talking about these offensive components, George Pickens, Jake Fromm, here's with DeAndre Swift. Yeah, you need to score points. You're going to play against a team that's one of the easier ones to score points against in the SEC and LSU, and your defense is legit one of the best in the country.
I'll say this, the Swift injury, I'd be a little bit more concerned if I'm a UGA fan had he been brought back to the locker room. It seemed that he just went to the sideline, they took his shoulder pads off, and he sat there, which to me says it's nothing like, it's nothing like a broken bone or something was dislocated and had to go back, go to the locker room and get it put back in place. The George Pickens thing, I'm telling you could see it brewing. As I'm watching the game, because he's out there with Swilling, they're Trey Swilling, they're lined up pretty much the whole, and that's the other tweet I put out there. 10 minutes of eligibility today for George Pickens.
Yep.
All right,
you're
he
right.
doesn't go out there in the first half. The speculation begins on Twitter.
Team-issued deal.
Well, before that, it was, he may have flu-like symptoms.
Yes, I thought it was a flu.
And going into half,
It has been cold on some of these.
Well, yeah, if you're experiencing flu-like symptoms, you're probably going to be on the sideline in a parka, right? Not standing on the sideline fully pads.
But Theraflu.
Yeah, but then he comes back out to start the second half, and it comes out that maybe unspecified team issues. 10 minutes later, it took 10 whole minutes of playing in the game before he got kicked out for throwing a punch at Trey Swilling.
After a 40-yard touchdown catch. So you get this
in
mix
a blowout.
You get the mix of hot-headed freshman, awesome. Poor move by hot-headed freshman.
Right.
It's a little mix of both.
And other than the touchdown, he caused 2 pass interference flags to be thrown as well on him. So, he's a difference maker when you're trying to get out there. The fight thing, you could see Swilling was kind of trying to. And listen, I guarantee you, they probably coach these guys up. Hey, this guy's a bit of a head case.
This guy's a hot head. Go get him.
If you can get under his skin, try to do it. And I guarantee you, Swilling was doing that for multiple plays.
Well, and you notice, too, on that play, Swilling does the thing that is allowed in college football, which is you'll still get a penalty for it, but throw the open hand shot to the face.
Right.
As soon as that happened, Pickens turned it into, you're going to hit me with the open hand? You're going to hit me with the B-slap? I'm going to make a fist. Okay, once you make that fist, you're out of the ball game.
Well, haymaker.
Even before then, and I don't know what the SEC or Georgia would do. Certainly, Georgia doesn't want to suspend him with Lawrence Cager out more than they would have to. But before the punch, he did take Trey Swilling and run him into a brick wall. Now, they have hedges in Athens. There's a brick wall down there on the flats of Georgia Tech. He did slam him into a brick wall before he threw the punch, which also isn't smart because punching a man who has a helmet on could hurt your hand. You kind of need a hand to play wide receiver in college football.
You would think so in most cases.
It's
yeah.
Most of the time.
It's a total hot-headed move.
And
So-
I mean, and everybody and people are going out there. Well, Swelling should have been ejected too. Okay. I think Los just nailed it. The fact that it was one of those palm first punches that actually makes a big difference. And not to mention that was the first one thrown.
Yep.
It's usually the guy that retaliates with the right hook that gets flagged.
Yeah, I mean, if you're George Pickens and you retaliate, yeah, you're going to get the 15-yard penalty. Here's my open hand slap right to your head. I'm going to go at the visor. I'm going to go in your face mask. The minute you make a fist, you're out of the ballgame.
Bottom line, Georgia ends up 11-1. Georgia Tech ends up 3-9, and Georgia is headed to the SEC championship game. And by the way, we have a special deal. You have a chance still all season long. You still have a chance to register for a conference championship game day experience, and will include a pregame here at Sports and Social. You get transportation to the famed 680 The Fan championship tailgate party and 2 tickets to the championship game taking place next week in the Bins, December 7th. You also get a $2,000 tab and a VIP table here at Sports and Social. All you have to do to get your hands on that is go to 680thefan.com/championship to register. And the other big game a lot of folks were looking at early noon kickoff, Michigan at home, dragged, beaten up, and allowed the 50 burger to be fried as Ohio State runs, throws all over them, 56-27. The Buckeyes finish 12-0 and head into the Big Ten championship game undefeated.
This always goes back to the same thing. Every single one of these matchups, and it gets overlooked no matter what. Michigan has about 55% of their roster that are 4- and 5-star athletes. Ohio State is playing with Alabama and Georgia at 80% of their roster, and it shows in these football games. Every single time you see Michigan make it close, get tight. Hey, we're down by 15. The athletes start making plays, the ones that Ohio State has, the ones that Michigan does not have. And so it was more of the same. It wasn't a big surprise from that standpoint. Shea Patterson had been on a hot streak playing quarterback for Michigan, but you saw what happened when you ran into that kind of a team. Oh, by the way, if you hear the screams, Auburn carrying one in with 5:36 left. They're looking to take a 17-10 lead on Alabama.
And I think the most impressive thing out of watching Ohio State today was the way they dominated the line of scrimmage. Yeah, Justin Fields had some moments. He, by the way, started off the game atrocious. Until he threw connecting that first touchdown, he did not look good throwing the ball. It was Dobbins over and over again, and that offensive line for Ohio State just absolutely dominating Michigan. Dobbins the MVP today, even though you saw Justin Fields, and obviously he had the major scare, went down with a potential knee injury.
Was that this week or last week, Sean Ernie?
What was it? The first play back in, comes off the field, play back on the field, touchdown
Throws
pass.
the touchdown, and I'll tell you, though, when you start to eliminate the ability for him to be able to move, it does limit their offense. Now, they didn't have any answer for J.K. Dobbins the entirety of that football game. By the way,
3 plays over 30 yards rushing.
that was a pick six for Auburn, so that's the 17-10 lead with 5:36 Alabama ball once again. But you start to see what happens with Ohio State. Ohio State is a really good football team, but it is going to require somebody to play defense against them. The only teams that are playing defense right now that we can talk about in this thing are Clemson, to a lesser extent Alabama, and Georgia. And that's it right now.
Speaking of that, you just gave the update on the Auburn-Alabama scores. We take a look at the Georgia United Credit Union scoreboard. Auburn up on Alabama 17-10. Clemson 38-3, drubbing of South Carolina. Clemson finishes 12-0. They haven't lost a game since 2017. And while everybody's talking about what LSU is going to do if they win or lose, what Georgia's going to do if they win or lose, is Alabama getting in with the win and other losses? Clemson keeps rolling along and keeps beating up folks.
Well, Clemson's biggest problem, and again, it's not created by them. It's the fault of the rest of the ACC. More likely, they're going to play Virginia in the title game. Virginia can't play with them. But you're talking about the 65th ranked schedule in the country. This is the same argument we used to have when it was Boise State going undefeated. It's a Boise State bad schedule. That kind of situation, as you'll hear the yelling. Alabama just took it back all the way for a touchdown.
Bama's not ready to go home, Carlos.
Shootout.
It's now a shootout at 17 all pending the extra point. But that's the problem. And again, it's not the making of Clemson. Clemson went out and scheduled, all right, we're going to play Texas A&M. We'll play our schedule and we'll see what happens. Unfortunately, the ACC is so bad this year. that their schedule, even though they've been dominant, does not compare to LSU, and it does not compare to Ohio State at the top.
But they're starting to run people, and they start to play balanced football. And their defense, Nerney, doesn't get credit. Obviously, you're not playing high-caliber teams, but once the schedule is set, then it's up to you to determine what matters and what it looks like. And they put a drubbing on a team that beat the Georgia Bulldogs and hung around with the Georgia Bulldogs 38-3.
Well, I think what started as their greatest, thing holding them back at the beginning of the year, as far as in terms of the playoff committee, is their weak schedule. But I think that actually worked out in their favor over the long haul, because nobody was even mentioning Clemson. They flew under the radar the entire year. You rarely even remember that Clemson was a top 5 team throughout the year. What was the talk at the beginning of the year? Trevor Lawrence comes out. He's a gunslinger. He's throwing, all of a sudden, he throws some picks to start off the year. People are throwing up red flags. Well, sophomore slump, not the same quarterback. Well, what has he done since then? I think he's thrown like 22 touchdowns to 3 interceptions right now. So that's the pace that he's on. Clemson is a monster, and they will be in the playoffs.
But there is still something, too, and I firmly believe this. When you have won games where it's been tight football, you realize how to win those football games. It's very difficult over the course of a college football season to just blow everybody out and just, hey, we wiped the whole map of everybody and we're the champions. At a certain point, somebody's going to get you in a one-score game, and do you know how to win that type of football game? That's where Clemson's been lacking this year. Now, I'm not saying that they're more than capable of going through and winning the College Football National Championship, but if you find yourself in a tight football game, there's only a handful of these teams that have played them. Remember, they played North Carolina down to the wire. North Carolina went for the 2, missed out on that opportunity. Ohio State has yet to play one of those types of football games. Penn State was 11 points. That was about the max. Georgia obviously has played in a lot tighter football games. And then when you take a look at the top, LSU, they've played that game. They played that game against LSU. They played that game against Texas. They have played much tighter football games.
Alabama, one-score game.
Despite the fact that they've had a crazy offense, they've played those types of football games.
All right, when we get back, do Georgia Tech and Georgia have the exact same expectations for next year? We'll get to that. I'm home team. He's Carlos Medina. He's Sean Nerney. We're here on College Game Day live from Sports and Social here in the Battery, Atlanta on the Fan, 680, 93.7 FM.
Atlanta's 26-year home for Falcons fans has you covered all season.
It's going to be about a 5-minute break.
Okay.
And the quarterback himself live every Monday after the game.
It's Matt Ryan, and I'm live with the front row every week after the game, only on Atlanta's 26-year home for Falcons fans. The Fan, 680 and 93.7 FM.
The holiday season is here, and BetOnline.net wants to celebrate with you as a huge slate of college and pro football games are on tap this long Thanksgiving weekend. Follow all the action at BetOnline.net as college rivalry week heats up. The pro football schedule is just as packed as divisional leaders square off, with New England taking on Houston and San Francisco heading to Baltimore. Before the next kickoff, head over to BetOnline.net for the latest news, scores, and lines. Bring the game home with BetOnline.net.
More first responders trust Verizon.
Is that a turnover?
For coverage when it matters most. And when you choose the network for first responders, your team is ready.
Yeah, I think he just threw a pick.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
Terrible quarterbacking over here.
What was he looking at?
Oh, fumble.
2 hands on the ball, son. Fumble.
Goodness, too easy, too. Wow.
That's white ball.
This game will get onto the wire.
Be sure to download the new Local Vine app and have your beer, wine, and spirits waiting on you when you show up. Or stop by the AMC Shopping Plaza just down the street from the ballpark. Local Vine, we can't wait to be drinking buddies.
Anything change yet, Nerney?
No.
No.
I mean, it's just as miserable as
I hope not. It's only been a couple weeks.
Well, yeah, I mean, but yeah, I mean, hell, we've lived together for 5 years.
Right,
so
right.
Yeah, no, I'm still submissive and have to do whatever I'm told. Nothing's changed from that
I
standpoint.
hear that's what the deal is, isn't it?
Yeah.
Isn't that what package deal?
It's funny.
Home
I
team?
actually had a little.
Isn't that the deal, right? You gotta give in once you put that ring on.
Yeah, it's over.
Oh yeah.
You know,
Like today, I actually uttered the words today. I said, "I feel like your errand boy." Sometimes.
Oh, my
that's all right.
goodness.
That's good. That's first couple of weeks. It's all
Oh
right.
yeah. Well, no, but it's always been like that.
Dude, I used to be like this. I'm not.
But-
Man, I'm a grown man. I'm not doing what you're talking about.
She
But
just does this thing where she waits.
Oh yeah.
she'll need something, but she will wait until I finally leave the house to say, "Oh, will you get this while you're out?" Like every time she never goes and gets herself something.
Can I give you a?
I'm a grown man. 3 years later, all right, whatever.
Small piece of advice.
You're right. I know. Game's on.
You need to get this out here. Tell
You're
her
right.
I will
I'm
take
dumb.
care of anything you need, but I need a honey-do list.
Yeah.
A what?
Cool. Say a honey-do list.
Uh-huh.
All right, you just tell me. Here are the 3 things I need. As long as the day ends with me taking care of it, cool. But don't spring it on me when
that's
it's
me.
5 minutes
Gotcha.
before we're
Excellent.
gonna watch
So
the game.
this is what we
You
worked
let me
out.
know. You let me know.
We used to fuss about
Like
exactly
I
what
told
you're
you.
saying.
Told you, let me know.
Oh, we need to run
let me
some
know.
errands.
Yeah.
That's all.
Okay, so I'm thinking we're going to do 2 or 3 things, and I'm missing 3 games or whatever. And then we were at the store all day looking at stuff. So I said, hey, all right, we're going to have to come to some agreement. So basically what she figured out, if you feed me, I will be quiet and watch some of the games on my phone. Don't just assume I want to go with you to stores for 7 hours a day. But arguing about it, you're not going to win.
Not gonna win.
It took me
Yeah.
3 years to figure that out.
Damn.
Who you think you? I'm a grown man. I don't need to do this. I'm gonna stick up for myself. What do you think I signed up? Yeah, none of that works. All right, you're right. Yes.
Oh, man.
No. I thought you said okay. Don't worry about it. I just want to see the 8 o'clock game.
Plus, we're a great one-stop shop for all your gift giving, and we ship anywhere. Go nuts this year and place your order at stonemountainpecan.com or visit
Casey
us on
Smallwood.
78 in Monroe. And don't forget, eat well, be happy.
Rush into your neighborhood grocery store today to score entry into Nature Sweets Tomatoes and Touchdowns Ultimate College Football Experience Sweepstakes. You can win a VIP trip for 2 to the biggest college football game ever. So head
Oh,
to your
yeah.
neighborhood grocery store produce aisle and get game day ready with Nature Sweet Tomatoes. Game day just got even sweeter with Nature Sweet Tomatoes. Contest ends December 16th. No purchase necessary. Open to legal U.S. residents 18 years or older. Visit naturesweet.com/promotions for rules and entry details.
This is College Football Saturday on 680 The Fan, powered by Georgia's own credit union.
An ID here.
The only Atlanta radio station, live from the winter meetings.
WCNN North Atlanta, a Dickey broadcasting station.
Ben Ingram and Jonathan Chadwick will be live from San Diego with exclusive news and reports. All thanks to Georgia Natural Gas, Atlanta's baseball station. The Fan. College updates all afternoon. The Fan's College Game Day, live from Sports and Social at the Battery Atlanta, on the biggest college football station in the country. The Fan, 680 and 93.7 FM.
Welcome back in to College Game Day, live from Sports and Social here in the Battery Atlanta home team. Carlos Medina, Sean Nerney here until 6 o'clock. You can give us a call, 404-231-1680. If you're a Georgia fan, how do you feel about the 52-7 win over the Yellow Jackets? If you're a Jacket fan, how do you feel about the season and what you've seen 1 year in from Jeff Collins? 404-231-1680. Expectations. Will they be exactly the same next year? I say yes. Jeff Collins was expected to win 3-4 games this year. I think expectations will be around that next year. Georgia expected to go to the SEC championship game and have expectations to be in the college football playoff. They're going to have those next year. So I think expectations for both programs will remain the same next year.
Well, I think as far as Georgia Tech is concerned, just looking back over this season, obviously, you look at the Citadel loss, and you would have hoped that they would have pulled out 1 or 2 more victories. They came close against Virginia. You would love to have seen a better showing against Virginia Tech where they took a shutout there. But, overall, I think this season was really much what we expected. Going into next year, I think it may be safe to hope for maybe an extra win or 2, but I think a lot of it has to do with what they look like offensively. Now I know, you look at the team, it's the front seven, it's a line of scrimmage that has to get better. Okay, now next year you'll have Clayton, who was a transfer from Florida. He'll be eligible to play, so he'll be on your defensive line.
He's a grown man.
He's a grown man that he will make your defensive line better just from him being out there. But it's still going to take another year or 2 to get these guys, these freshmen, bigger offensive and defensive linemen on campus and get them ready to play. I think the biggest question for me going into this offseason is really about the quarterback position. And if there's really one area where I can go back and say, I think Jeff Collins missed an opportunity, I think it's with a guy like Jordan Yates. Now, going into this year, the new redshirt rule, you can play a kid up to 4 games before deciding to redshirt him or not. Jordan Yates appeared in 2 games. He appeared in 1 play against Duke just because I think somebody was missing a helmet. He came in to hold a extra point attempt, and then he played against Virginia Tech for the fourth quarter. Now, you saw him today, so I guess they made it 3 today because you saw him late today. Funny, we were talking earlier before the show.
Welcome to college football, kid.
How he was brought into the game today, where both him and Jemias Griffin, the other true freshman, the running back, start on the 2-yard line.
You're down 40 in the fourth on the 2-yard line.
That's where they start him. So I think so. As far as James Graham, quarterback, goes, I think he did a good job, an admirable job this season. But I didn't see anything from him that makes me think that he is the bona fide starter going into next year. So I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens with the quarterback position over the offseason.
For Georgia, it's going to always be the same. You now have 3 straight 11-1 regular seasons. Their entire thing is playoffs or bust. That's how it's always going to be. That's how it's always going to be under Kirby Smart. I think the more interesting question is Georgia Tech. And, Nerney, you hit on a portion of it. I want to take it a little bit further. You said better on those lines. I say bigger on those lines. And, Nerney, you're absolutely right. This is going to take, it's not just one extra recruiting class. If you already had the size that you needed, we could then talk about Jordan Yates. We could talk about the skill position players. But it's still about at least another 2 to 3 recruiting classes to where you can say, you know what, I'm starting to have the size that I want on the defensive and offensive lines. This Georgia Tech defense, and oh, by the way, the best thing I can say about both sides of the line of scrimmage, they play hard. They haven't quit throughout this entire thing. But this is a team that in order to get penetration, they don't do it with size. They got to slant. They got to constantly play games up front. Once they get the guys up front that have the prerequisite size to play ACC football, watch out. Then they're going to start chasing those bowl games. You can start talking about some bigger things.
You have to get penetration, and you have to be a little bigger on the offensive and the defensive lines. Okay, the question is how long it's going to take. This year, one, I think when Jemias Griffin is a senior, I think when you have your senior quarterback 3 years from now, they're going to be in a better place. I'm thinking this is going to take 4 years, and the way it started off, you're on the right track to do it the right way.
And let me just say this, because there are some people that are very tied to the hip to Paul Johnson and his ways. He still has some supporters out there, and they're very negative on how this year went for Jeff Collins. And listen, I can be negative on certain things too. I think Yates should have gotten more snaps this year. But at the same time, I am firmly, the way that I've watched this offense, and some people today, going after the offensive coordinator, Pat Newt, saying, oh, we got to move on from this offense. The offense, from where it was at the beginning of the year, where you were basically kind of running an option, still basically an option-based running attack, to where you are now, it's night and day. I can be skeptical about some things. I am fully behind this coaching staff. I've seen the progression in the offense, and I see what this offense can be once you get those pieces, particularly on the offensive line.
By the way, if you heard the eruption, right now you do have a 24-17 game as Alabama was able to put another touchdown on Auburn. Auburn comes right back down the field, a one-handed catch by Williams down the left sideline. They're now back in business with 1:43 left, 1st and 10 at about the 20-yard line. So we'll see how this half of wild arse football ends up playing out.
Yeah, looking at the Georgia United Credit Union scoreboard earlier today, it was Ohio State all over Michigan 56-27. Clemson a 38-3 winner over South Carolina. Some games in action right now. Wisconsin has grabbed a 10-7 lead over Minnesota. Oregon on top of Oregon State 17-3, and Baylor is drubbing Kansas 31-0. That game with a minute to go in the first half. How do we grade Jeff Collins? I think he gets high marks. It wasn't a season where you're a one-win team. Obviously, people are going to look at the Citadel game, but anybody in college football can have the one bad game. So he had his bad game against the Citadel. That being said, I think he met expectations. I think he has shown that he has a good coaching staff, and I think he has gotten the most out of what he has had coming into the door.
And what's been going on behind the scenes? Recruiting. And he's been doing recruiting. Look, check out the Tech rankings.
Top 25 right now.
But they've been steadily in the top 25 throughout this. So I think because of that, and I'm going to give and this is being very critical. Some people may be. I'm going to give him a whole A- on this, and it's simply because the fact that I think that Jordan Yates should have gotten a couple extra looks in the season. That's the only gripe I have, mainly because of the recruiting job. Let's not forget, Jemias Griffin, the true freshman you saw taking snaps at running back today, he was one of Collins' first big signings.
The only thing I'll say is maybe there's something they know. And I only say that because if Tobias Oliver could have worked out, I think they would have gone that route. It wasn't the right decision So they got James Graham the snaps, and over the long haul of the season, that decision was the better one. So I'm just saying, I agree with you. I would have liked to see more of Yates, but there's got to be something they know that we don't, not to get the young man some reps.
This is an A for me, and this would be an A for me had they won 5 games.
Okay.
Because when you talk about the recruiting that they're doing, a top 25 class that they're putting together, CPJ never sniffed a top 25 class. A top 40 class was not realistic. Tech consistently lived at like 45 to 55, and they did well with those classes, but let's face it, if you want to start playing modern, exciting football, you need the horses to do that. For me, it's a B. Now, the other thing is culture. Have you been able to ingrain your culture? Did your guys continue to play for you? And I think that's a big factor. I think that's one of the things that they've been able to establish. Recruiting with the culture implant, things should be able to turn around over the next 24 months.
Yeah, and the only thing, I can't pick his mind, but if I had to guess as to why you didn't see a guy like the true freshman Yates out there, it's because of the play of the offensive line. You didn't really know what you were going to get, snap in, snap out, and pass protection. And, it's just me. I watched him play, and I watched him play in high school, and I see the confidence he has under center. So, I think he could have handled it, but, maybe the coaching staff, and obviously they're around the kid a hell of a lot more than I am, so that was their decision. And I think it had something to do with the offensive line.
And one of the difficulties that Georgia Tech has that does not apply to every other university, the Institute, it's not like you can go the JUCO route and bring in a bunch of JUCO offensive linemen. Many of them will not qualify or can't cut it at the Institute.
You're going to get transfers.
So you got to find those transfers. They're going to have to sit out. Maybe every now and then you can land hey, we got a left guard who's transferring in from wherever. Great grades, this and this. He wants a chance to play ACC football. That's what they're going to have to aggressively do, because even when you do recruit some of these freshmen, 3-star and 4-star offensive linemen, they're not going to be ready for ACC football for at least a year until they get into the weight training program. They get basically eating at the table and doing training table on a regular basis. So that's why when we talk about this is going to be a little bit longer than some of the other universities deal with, that's why it's going to be that way.
All right, when we get back, the Georgia Bulldogs did not have Lawrence Cager on the field today and won't have him in the SEC championship game. Will that be helpful to the other wideouts on the team? We'll get into that. He's Sean Nerney, Carlos Medina, and home team. We're here, College Game Day live from Sports and Social here in the Battery, Atlanta on the Fan, 680, 93.7 FM.
680 The Fan's
Oh, that's a touchdown.
Yeah, it is.
That's 6.
One of Georgia's
Oh, no, that's 6. Oh.
This is why you play these games at the end of the season. This game is incredible.
By the way, considering that the committee is loaded with defensive guys, this ain't helping Alabama.
No.
I had a buddy of mine who, he's an attorney. He went to A&M, and then he did his graduate degree over at Kansas. Him and I are texting back and forth. We're trying to throw something together with our families. We couldn't put it together. It's just nasty weather. Everything sucked in San Antonio. And he just goes, oh, by the way, Georgia's defense is a lot better than Alabama's, because they moved the ball against Alabama. Against Georgia, they were like, we can't do a damn thing.
God, that was rough.
That catch right there was top 5 of the season right there.
Oh.
And then here we go.
Double move.
That was luck.
Good throw, too.
That was
Big throw.
luck.
It's either a touchdown or incomplete pass. All right, Bo.
All right. See, but here's the problem Gus has moving forward. He's got probably the best defense Auburn's had in 20 years, and then it goes away next year. So even though he's got the quarterback, then it's something like, I don't have the defense again.
Well, Bo Nix might have to save him. They can coach him up to be a little bit better throwing the ball. He might have to save him. They got to win with offense.
We're going to lock in your rate for the next 10 years with no increases. Guys, Matt Charnoff here to talk about my friends at Breda Pest Management. Yes, only the Breda's locking your termite rate every year so you know exactly what you're going to pay. How refreshing is that? You'll see
Who was that, your mom on Twitter, Nerney?
Yeah.
Oh, no.
That's what moms do, right?
Well, it's not like when I met Nerney's family at his wedding, You'd be amazed how many of them were like listeners.
Oh yeah.
They were
Yeah.
like they listened all. They were like,
Why
oh
would they
yeah,
not?
y'all do this. I was like, that's really cool.
You know, my mom, when she came down here last time, she listened to Chuck and Turnoff. She was like, man, what the hell am I listening to?
I checked out this radio show. All I heard were farts and a bunch of insults. And them talking about 7 marriages on the show.
She listened to Sports Talk in Baltimore. She found it funny as hell when she came down here and listened to Chuck and Turnoff.
Somebody had a really great tweet. It was the picture of me, Matt, and Hoyt at the Void, and they were like, caption this.
Yeah.
Somebody tweeted,
I seen it.
5 Marriage Club. I was like, that shit's funny.
Nobody really got a chance to showcase anything. 3 catches for Simmons, catch for Wolf, catch for Pickens.
Yeah, Simmons got a couple. Blaylock was there.
Blaylock 2 catches. Like, really.
But that's their style.
Dude, he came out with that back shoulder in the second half. All of a sudden, Fromm was throwing darts.
Well, and also, too, they opened up with actually going and showing something that I think they didn't want to until LSU. They actually started much more play-action pass.
Yeah.
It's like, let me show you.
Oh, yeah, the tight ends had a good game. Eli Wolf
got down the field.
He had there was I can't remember if it was 2 or 3 plays, but he had a pancake on Trey Swilling on the outside. I think it was the next play is when he caught the one that brought him inside the 10. He's a good-looking player. But it's really, I mean, hell, with the tight ends, they have good tight ends. It's just if they find ways to use them or not.
Yeah, they actually got the ball to him and Warner today.
Yeah. Friggin' Tex tight end missed a potentially huge play that first drive. Opened up the wrong way somehow.
The Fans College Game Day, live from Sports and Social, keeping you up to speed on all the afternoon college action on the college football voice of the South, The Fan, 680 and 93.7 FM.
Welcome back in to College Game Day. Home team, Sean Nerney.
Oh, my
Carlos
God.
Medina, and every time we come back, somebody in the Auburn, Alabama game in the Iron Bowl is scoring. Live from Sports and Social here in the Battery, Atlanta on the Fan, 680, 93.7 FM. As Alabama, I don't know, it looked like it was more than 50, just scored on a touchdown strike, pinning the extra point. Bama will be up 31-24, gentlemen, in the first half.
How was the over-under today?
Goodness, good question.
Look that up.
That is ridiculous. And I'll tell you this. For all the questioning of Mac Jones, the whole idea is just get it to the playmakers. He's got it to the playmakers. He hasn't done anything crazy. He's just gotten the ball to the playmakers, and it's resulted in 31 points in the first half.
The over-under was 50 and a half.
Well, you're in good shape, over-under.
Somebody is going to get paid.
Decided early.
Yeah.
Somebody right now is sitting back going like, I can just turn this thing off.
They're getting ready for Cyber Monday.
Away.
Tell you that right now. Lawrence Cager didn't play in this game today. Georgia beats Georgia Tech 52-7. And some of the nuggets within the game, Georgia Tech set a school record when they didn't want to for the most punts in a game in school history. And this was the largest margin of victory and the most points the Bulldogs had ever scored in this rivalry game with the 52. That being said, they did it without Lawrence Cager, and his absence you knew was going to give some of the other wide receivers on the Georgia staff a bit of an opportunity. Did they get those? Because they didn't throw the ball a whole lot more. There wasn't one wide receiver or tight end. They got a whole lot more, but everybody got a whole lot more than they would have had Lawrence Cager been in the game.
I think Lawrence Cager is a big factor from being an outlet, from being a guy that you can throw a contested football to because of his size. With the ankle injury, everything he posts on Instagram screams you're not going to see him again for the remainder of the year, despite their whole discussion of he's just going to miss this week and next week. I don't think you're going to see him again.
Yeah.
But I think so much of it comes down to this. Jake Fromm has been so good over his first couple of seasons at anticipation throws, knowing where guys are going to be. And when you see him make those throws right now, the ball's at a guy's feet, guy's not turned around. He did to D-Rob. He threw one out to the left flat. He never got his head around to look for the football as it's dying at his feet. The same thing goes for, then he's late with the football because then he's waiting for guys to actually show open before he throws the football. So this entire thing is out of sync. I don't know if Lawrence Cager really would be the answer to fix this sort of deal.
Yeah, and it's weird because, I mean, obviously this is before Pickens is suspended for next week's game, so now you got to add him on top of things. And it's weird because it was so different in the first half. In the first half, it looked like another Cager-less receiving core where you had guys late on routes, not running tight routes. Jake Fromm obviously not on the same page with those receivers. And then, you have halftime where obviously something hit home. Tyler Simmons, he connects with him, connects with Blaylock, connects with Pickens before he gets tossed out of the game. So, it's weird because, and I'll say this. Georgia Tech was, their defense for the most part in the first half, they were, they weren't gassed. They still had full energy. By that second half, the amount of 3-and-outs that the Tech offense did over and over, and the fact that UGA was running the ball and just pounding Tech's defense was spent in that second half. And Jake Fromm in the passing game didn't really have success until that second half. So I think the fact that, you're without Cager, who is by far the receiver that has the most chemistry with Jake Fromm, I think that's easy to anybody that's watched UGA football to see that. Without him there, and then now add on top of that Pickens, who was your deep threat guy, a guy that drew 2 PIs before he got kicked out of the game today, I think it is a big issue going into LSU.
Georgia's MO is ugly, and it's going to continue to be ugly. You're talking about a team that, as a max, has given up 17 points in a football game. Now, did that against Florida. You committed, 4 turnovers and missed 2 field goal opportunities against South Carolina. 17 points got you beat. I think they look at it and they just say, if we can keep it right around 20 points, we'll play ugly enough football to find a way to score enough points with one of the best kickers in all of college football. Now, obviously, Hot Rod missing one right before the end of the half obviously caused you to be like, oh, man, you hit one from 49, you missed it from here. That's a little bit of a concern. But this is the MO. This is what it's going to be. They're not going to turn into some sort of perfectly polished, orchestrated, throw the football. It's going to look beautiful. They're going to play ugly football. That's what they're married to.
And they should.
Don't change anything. Is what I say.
One of the biggest things you want to do against Joe Burrow is keep the ball out of his hands. And how do you do that? You have an effective running game. You ground and pound, and you eat clock. And that's something. If Georgia, if they can find a way like they did today to be consistent with the play action, get the tight ends involved, and you can eat clock and run it swift. What did he average? 7 yards carry today. That formula, you got a chance against us, LSU. I think that's better. You're better served doing that than trying to get into a shootout.
Now, the question is, what will be the status of DeAndre Swift and what will be his ability to execute? Because even when a guy is there, and you brought up a good point about Kerryon Johnson getting hurt towards the end of the season a couple of years ago, what happens if it's a situation where DeAndre Swift can play, but he's not himself? You're still going to give him carries. You're still going to take some plays to see what he can do, and you might be taking away from James Cook or Brian Herrien. So you might be in a situation where if he's not 100%, maybe you're not at 100% altogether because you might, I don't want to say waste plays, but you won't be getting maximum production out of plays if the man's not 150, 70%.
Whether DeAndre Swift is healthy or not, it still doesn't change the fact of how they're going to play this football game.
They shouldn't.
First one to 24. That's the way they want to play it. If it gets away from them, there is no amount of, hey, if we only had this guy, if our running back was only healthy, if Cager was only healthy. As soon as it goes to somewhere in the realm of like 30, 34, now Georgia can get to 30. But once you start playing into a shootout situation, like what is going on right now at Jordan-Hare, 31-24 at half, Georgia does not win that type of football game because they're not built to win that type of football game. Their ideal game is we're playing with LSU and it's 13-10 at half, and you've got to grind to go ahead and get those points. So I don't care who's in the backfield. I don't care who's at receiver. It's all about that Georgia defense being able to basically enforce their will and what they want to play against LSU.
404-231-1680. That is the number to get in here on College Game Day. Home team, Carlos Medina, Sean Nerney. There's a championship game next week. One team will be wearing white, gold, and purple. The other team will be wearing red and black. You can get in that game for free. And before you get into the game, you can come here to Sports and Social, get yourself a VIP table for free, get yourself a $2,000 tab for free. All you have to do is go to 680thefan.com/championship to register. And on top of that, you're going to get 2 tickets to the game. And if you win, you're going to get transportation to the game, the 680 The Fans Championship Tailgate Party, as you go into the bins watching the championship game.
Let me just tell you how much fun it is. I've done the last 2 SEC championship games here. I already have my table downstairs.
Oh, goodness.
I've already reserved one. Got a handful of friends going. I'm going to go hit the 680 tailgate, come back over here. Things are going to get out of hand, and hopefully we'll see another W.
Are things out of hand with Jim Harbaugh? Another game against his rival, Ohio State. Another sad ending for Michigan on their final game of the regular season as the Ohio State Buckeyes, they finished the season 12-0 with a 56-27 win in Michigan over Jim Harbaugh's Michigan Wolverines. And now, is he in trouble? Is he not in trouble? What is the deal with the guy who's coaching Michigan?
So from anybody, an outsider looking in, you would think that, yes, he's got to be in trouble right now, right? What was it, 5 straight losses to Ohio State, whatever it is? He's got to be out the door, right? Anybody that's not a Michigan fan has got to think that way. Well, after watching the scoreboard today, watching little Ohio State, Michigan, I decided to take it upon myself to do a little, I don't know if it's scientific or unscientific, little unofficial poll.
You took a single-person poll of a giant fan.
Basically the one Michigan fan that I knew, my Uncle Ivan.
That's a
right?
good sample size.
So, yeah, exactly.
Legitimate
I
research.
think he represents the majority of the fan base, right?
Ivan.
Pulse of the people.
So very simply, I just wrote, are you done with Harbaugh yet or nah? And he wrote back, I've gone back and forth, but no, I'm not done. Bottom line is, who are you going to get? If he would just beat OSU once, we wouldn't be having this discussion. And I think that's how the fan base, for better or worse, probably for worse, they are so inundated with the legend of the Harbaugh up in Michigan.
Yeah.
They will follow this guy to the cliff and over.
So much of it. And this is where you have to think about how hard it is to hit the home run. As of now, can we say Kirby Smart from Mark Richt? That's back-to-back home runs.
Yes, that's 2 years.
It's hard to hit home runs.
Yeah, he's all right.
When you talk about Michigan, Michigan is a team that went, Bo Schembechler, made your way over to Lloyd Carr, won a national championship in 1997, and then you went through a whole mess of people that you were like, no, this is a Michigan man. Then they went outside the bubble. Let's bring in Rich Rodriguez. Never worked over there. They went through the better part of a decade of, oh my God, we have done the wrong thing consistently. At least Jim Harbaugh has them as a consistent top 15 team, and you're always just saying, what if it's just this 1 year? Maybe we can get over the hump with Jim. And that's a problem, because if you want to improve on Jim Harbaugh, you better tell me who the person is, without a doubt, who's going to recruit at a higher level. It's going to beat Ohio State, because those are the only two things that matter in improving Michigan football.
I guess my question is, what are your expectations? Michigan's expectations are to be in the Big Ten championship game, to win the Big Ten conference, to go to the college football playoff, not to be 9-3, losing again to Ohio State. So you're right. You don't need to just throw people out if there isn't a big problem. The question is he meeting expectations, and do you think he can get closer to meeting them? Because he has the same budget, he has the same recruits, he has the same ability to do what Ohio State is doing, and he's not doing it.
Let me give you a name. If I tell you Jim Harbaugh or Matt Campbell.
Oh.
Now, you better be a hardcore football fan to know who Matt Campbell is, where you're like, where's he coach at? It's Iowa State. Now, he's made Iowa State relevant, but those are the waters you start swimming in when you start deciding between my guy and what's potentially out there.
Well, and I'll give you another name, PJ Fleck. Look what he's done at Minnesota over the last 3 years, going from a 500 or sub-500 team to where they're at now in the same conference as Jim Harbaugh. So, I love my uncle. He's a great guy, Uncle Ivan. Love the guy. But, I think that's how the fan base is. Because he is Harbaugh, nobody else would get the pass that he gets. But, I'm sure they're going to give him one more year.
Did he not do what Ohio State did? He did get a transfer in Shea Patterson, who has kind of bounced around, but he did get somebody who wanted to come to his program. It's just that Ohio State got Justin Fields.
He was going to turn it around. When you got Shea Patterson to come up from Ole Miss, every Michigan fan up there was, this is it. This is it. We got a quarterback, and we got Harbaugh.
I guess my question is, when is it going to be better? Because if this is all you're going to be, is that okay? And to your point, you don't want to be throwing coaches out in the street, have your recruiting up in the air, negative recruiting going on up there. But if he is getting the same opportunity as they're giving the coaching staff and the recruiters at Ohio State, and he is still a gap behind them, why and how long is this acceptable?
You got to recruit at a higher level. That's what it really comes down to, because, again, I brought up the numbers before. 60% of their roster, 4- and 5-star. Ohio State's living at 80%, and that shows up in every single one of these football games where, yeah, you can hang with them, you can get within a score, and then you realize, man, we don't have the horses that other program does. Until you can make up that gap, you're always going to be living in this world of, we can play, we're good, we're going to win 9 or 10 football games, but when it comes to the end of the year, this team with superior talent is going to beat us.
I think it's a situation where Jim Harbaugh is going to be on the hot seat, but I don't know if he is going to have to worry about losing his job. Maybe his seat stays warm for a while. Some other news around the world of college football. Barry Odom cut loose at Missouri. Same thing. What are expectations? 6-6 this year. Ugly win against Arkansas to finish some things out. 25-25 in his tenure with the Tigers. What are you supposed to be? I mean, obviously you don't want to ever say, well, we're just going to be playing for third behind Georgia and Florida. But what are you supposed to be at Missouri?
You're supposed to be Gary Pinkel. You're
okay.
supposed to be
the all-time winning coach.
You're supposed to be at that level where you're consistently winning 10 football games. And Barry Odom, 2 years ago, was close to being fired after a really poor start. Won 5 straight. Suddenly everyone went, man, he figured it out. And they started winning some football games. You're not supposed to be a team playing Arkansas, scratching and clawing just to figure out if you can beat one of the worst teams in the SEC. Barry Odom gets cut loose, and they'll go their own direction. But, again, Missouri has a history of finding really good football coaches. They just missed on Barry Odom.
Yeah, and I think something that hurt Barry Odom this season, too, is the hype when you realized that Kelly Bryant was going to be transferring in. The fan base got really excited. They expected bigger things out of the team this year, and where they end up with 6-6. I think with the expectations he had at the beginning of this year, we're getting Kelly Bryant here. That did not help him in the end run.
What's going to be the end result of this Iron Bowl? Auburn and Alabama. Are they helping?
700 points.
Are they hurting teams? Is Alabama helping themselves up 31-27? Their defense has given up 27 points, but offensively, they're halfway to 60 in the first half. With this being their final game, is this going to have any impact on the College Football Playoff Committee should Georgia not have a good outcome against LSU?
Alabama needed 2 different things today. They needed a win against a top 25 team because they don't have one. They also needed an impressive win in order to keep themselves in the running with this deal. Remember, at this point, if Georgia was to beat LSU, I think LSU and Georgia both get in, and that's the end of that.
Yes.
Here's Ohio State, and here's LSU to go with Clemson, and they're all moving on.
Yes.
But if Georgia was to get beat next week, suddenly that creates that vacuum of who's the next team, and that comes down to Oklahoma, who doesn't play really great defense, Utah, if depending on what happens with Oregon, if Utah was to beat Oregon, they do play defense, and Alabama, who is not playing defense to their standard of years past. I think then you have a very serious discussion where if Alabama was to smoke this team, win by 30, win by 20, then they're probably in the driver's seat. But because of where it is right now, I don't think they're in that situation.
Yeah, so I don't know. I'm looking at it like this. I think the committee's looking at Alabama, and they're more worried about the offense. What is Brown going to do out there without Tua in the offense? Can they still score points like they were able to with Tua? Well, so far today, yeah, they've been able to. Now, I know their defense is getting shredded right now, but I think the committee's really looking to penalize Alabama for their offense over their defense. And looking at elsewhere around the country, Oklahoma, Utah, I know Utah got the bid in the rankings this year or this week over Oklahoma. If it came down to 2-1 loss, a Big 12 winner, and the Pac-12 win, I'm still, man, I like Oklahoma, and I think the only reason I know they don't play defense, the only reason I'm giving it to them, and I think the committee may give it to them, is because of Jalen Hurts and the wins that he has had and he has pulled off, and the moxie that guy has. I think if they are looking for a deciding factor to pick Utah or Oklahoma, I think that guy may carry a little bit of weight.
What if Bama puts up 55 or 60? What if Georgia loses badly? What if things don't go Oklahoma's way? I'm just saying, I always am on the conspiracy theorist side of the college football playoff is a made-for-TV event, and making a whole lot of people angry, as well as getting a whole lot of eyes on the product, as well as a potential rematch of Alabama and LSU. Those aren't bad combinations when you're talking about getting the right thing at the end of the season.
Well, it's the highest rated football game this year, and I believe in the past 7 years. So, obviously, it does major numbers from that standpoint.
Day of my wedding. You were all
watching.
there
we
watching.
We were watching.
We
not,
were.
not during the ceremony.
No.
We
Solid.
respected the
It's,
ceremony.
not
Listen, the
solid.
way
It
the
was
ceremony
sacred.
was, I had a
Sacred.
huge glare in my face during the ceremony, so I wouldn't
Oh,
be
we
able
would
to
have
see
known.
anyway.
Yeah, we respected the ceremony,
Did
but
not defile the sanctity of the Nerney wedding.
as soon as the new Nernies walked down the aisle, every phone fired right back up. We're like, what's the score?
Cocktail
Man,
hour, baby.
LSU went wild. But so much of it, I think here's we talk about the politics of all of this. If you have Utah go out and take care of their business and beat Oregon, and they're a conference champion versus a team like Alabama, now you run the risk of what if you don't allow a Pac-12 one-loss conference champion to get in?
Ooh.
Because we've only allowed one time a one-loss champion from a league not get in. That was Ohio State last year because their loss to Iowa was so ugly that they decided, you know what, we're going to downgrade him. We're going to put him in the 6 hole, not even 5. We'll put him at 6. I think the politics of this starts to play out because you do have West Coast representatives within this group that also prefer defense, and I think that's where they would have the opportunity to get in over an Alabama football team.
And it still comes down to, what still has to be decided. Alabama, last time they lost a game, had to sit out and wait. The other part of it is, are they just out? They might be close. They might be team, 4B and be right there. Are they just out because they had their shot? Their strength of schedule is not what it's been. They had their shot. They came up a possession short, and that's just the way it goes.
And we've seen Big 12 football. We've seen it pan out enough to know that anybody can really win any given Sunday, even any given Saturday, because there's no defense. So Oklahoma could very well get knocked off by Oklahoma State. That kick off at 8:00 this evening.
But we've also, over the course of this entire thing, over the course of this playoffs, and we're not supposed to take into account history. You haven't had a Big 12 team advance yet. You've had consistently. Oklahoma last year came in giving up 31 points a game, out. The year before came in giving up 28 points a game, out. That is not a recipe for having success once we get to the Final Four grouping of teams. And so I think that's where this committee really gives a lot more weight to defense than we want to give it credit for, because defense is not cool. It ain't pretty. It ain't sexy.
That first half, Kyler Murray against the Bama defense, that was not – they picked it up in the second half, but that was not a good first half of football for the Big 12 last year.
Yeah, I didn't help them out. It's supposed to be year to year. Y'all thoughts on some of this stuff that went on? Elijah Moore from Ole Miss.
Oh, man.
Now, here's the question. Yes, he hurt his team. Did he cost his team the Egg Bowl? I want to ask you guys, because anybody could have gotten a penalty. Anything could have happened. The kicker still has to make the extra point.
Yep.
However, the songs that will be sung and the stories will be told is that Ole Miss had a chance to take care of business at the end of a game, and a selfish player did something really stupid. It cost them a penalty, and the extra point was longer than it needed to be, and Ole Miss lost.
We all want to have everything come down to one play, one single play. You know what? You'd given up points to Mississippi State team that had struggled scoring points throughout the entirety of the year. Yes, it came down where you can circle this one and say that's the play, but the kicker still missed it. You still didn't get the ball back. You had your opportunities. It's just very easy to pile on a 19-year-old and say he's the reason why.
And to be honest, this damn kicker is getting away with murder here, because the kicker gets to basically go into the wild. Nobody even mentions the kicker because of the act of the celebratory dog pee.
Right.
Everybody forgets the name of the damn
And what
kicker
does he
who
think?
missed the extra
Everybody knows if you dance too long, if you do something too wrong, you're going to get the 15-yarder.
Oh, he'd been sitting on that too.
What
you
are you
knew that was going to happen?
thinking when you are at the end of the game, you just got into the end zone, and now you do the fake dog pee, which costs your team 15 yards, which had some impact on the field goal, the place kicker missing the extra point.
I have to go back. I don't know if that player was a senior, if he was a redshirt junior, and he's going to be done after this year. I'm not really sure, but hopefully not, because I can only imagine. Hopefully he's a freshman, because as a coach, I would love to sit down and film going over this game and just slowly, let's go back, check out, okay, there's the touchdown. Let's just slow-mo this. All right, let me go back and let's just watch it one more time. Because, it's about as bad as you can get. It doesn't look like anything that was spontaneous. I mean, the way he broke into it, I think he was like, listen, if I get a touchdown today, that's what we're going to do.
All I know is he better never, ever, and I mean bet not, get another penalty for celebrating in the end zone when you're talking about a rival game, one that is going to – you hate it for a young kid, or a young man who's going to be remembered for this forever.
Yeah. And I'm sure that's the first thing. Trust me, I don't think this guy, and even if it's the most dialed-down celebration, over the next 12 months, I don't think you're going to – he may score 6 touchdowns in one game. I guarantee you he just goes straight over to the ref and hands him the football from now on.
Yeah, just a tough way to go. The Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets, they finish up 2019. I thought expectations were met. And the one thing you saw, you've seen other teams that have better facilities and longer coaches and better players quit in some games. Never saw Georgia Tech quit, not one time. Even today, guys are still out there scrapping and fighting. They just right now physically aren't where the program needs to be. And so I think that is the charge of a coach, to get every ounce of talent you can out of the players in the building. I think Jeff Collins and his staff did that. I think it's a successful season, year one.
I mean, listen, it was never really, to me at least, it was never really about wins and losses. It was about progressing week after week, installing a new page in your playbook week after week. And I think if you're looking at the offense, I think you saw that. I think you saw a run-based, almost option-like offense early in the season, and they're at where they're at now. Defensively, I thought there were some good things too. And let me single out a couple guys, because I think there's some guys on that Georgia Tech roster that played well above expectation. I think Paul Johnson deserves some credit, because they're Paul Johnson guys. Trey Swilling, one of the cornerbacks, the guy who got into the tussle today with Pickens, he's a guy that has played a really good season. The 2 safeties, Tariq Carpenter, who didn't make it out there, was battling injury, didn't play today, and then Wanye Thomas, who, Los, I don't know how much of Wanye you've seen play, but I've watched Wanye for a while now. He's a true sophomore, has one more year before he can think about the NFL, but he looks like a guy that can play on Sundays, and he certainly had a few plays today against Georgia to show you that.
Big scheme of things, you are talking about a team that Vegas put the over-under line at 4. Fact is, they didn't hit that because Citadel would have been there, but it's not like they were sitting back going, you know what, this is 6 or 7 wins, and then they'll figure it out from there. It was never going to be about that during this transitionary period. Let's watch how it grows over the next couple of years. I think Jeff Collins is doing a lot of the right things he needs to.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting over the next couple of years to see how the recruits are stockpiled, and then how you make the trek up the coastal charts and the coastal standings in the ACC. How was you guys' Thanksgiving? What did you guys get done? You were telling us yesterday, Nerdy, that somebody in your family, or you know something about a pretzel salad.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you guys if you guys were aware what pretzel salad was, because I put it out on Twitter.
Never heard of it.
And a lot of people responded back with no idea what pretzel salad is. Los, are you aware?
Somebody bring that over to your family's home?
It's a known thing. If you Google it, it'll pop up. It's not just a family tradition.
Okay.
We started it a few years, or we started partaking in it maybe 5 or 6 years ago. But basically what it is, it's a bed, just in a normal baking pan, a bed of pretzels, and then some whipped cream type topping with some strawberries.
Sounds
and
like diarrhea.
Oh, dude, it may be.
Carbs.
It's worth it. It's worth it.
Okay.
Well, no, not a ton of carbs. Well, maybe there are carbs. And then some strawberry topping on top of it.
Okay.
And it may not sound delicious, but it's one of those things that once you try it for the first time, that you'll like. I just didn't know if you guys had heard of it.
I've decided that the reason why I don't like Thanksgiving when I head back to San Antonio, like if I do it at home or we go over to my in-laws' house, I think I've fully figured it out. My in-laws talk more about me than my family does, which is kind of disappointing from that standpoint. But here's the question I always get when I fly to San Antonio around the family. So are you still doing that sports thing?
They don't listen to 680thefan.com?
Oh, no, they do their thing. But
having that app for 680theFan's app?
But here's the thing. If I was to be like, home team, are you still doing that sports thing?
Yeah, I'm kind of doing it.
Yeah,
that's what I do for a living.
There's a part of me that's like, yeah, I'm like parking cars, selling used cars.
Sounds condescending.
Yes, it is
like it doesn't mean much.
completely condescending.
You still doing that retirement thing?
Are you still selling that insurance? I'm like,
it's a job.
It's a job. Here's what I'm doing, and by the way, I have to do it quite a bit. So I don't need you to sit there asking me. It's like my son puts TPS reports, covers on them every single day. Well, his life sucks.
Well,
mine is a lot better. Stop asking me this damn question. But that's the one thing about going home. I just need my family to at least say, yeah, guess what? They work at a great radio station. Here's the work that they're all doing, and this is how they get it done. That is the one thing about going home that makes me insane every time.
Well, fortunately, wife is from College Park, And I'm from here, so we just ride around 285
So
on
they
Thanksgiving.
know. But they
so,
know.
yeah, everybody's kind of involved a little bit more closely. But I can see how that could be a little upsetting when you go home for the holiday.
I'm just very bothered by, because what am I supposed to do? Well, yeah, I'm on this radio station. We do these kind of things. This is sort of, it doesn't make any sense to them. Like, it's so outside of anything they would ever ponder. Like, you know what? No, actually, I'm practicing law. That's what I'm doing now. So stop asking me.
I'm doing brain surgery.
Yeah. Oh no, I left that. Now I'm handling brain surgery and CAT scans and everything else.
I'm separating conjoined twins is what I do.
It's crazy. I've been winning chess championships now for about the past 6 months. I'm going pro actually.
Actually, I'm leading a mission to Mars to help save Earth.
Oh yeah, it's amazing that NASA actually hired me. I'm working on rockets for about the next 6 years.
All right. Well, when we get back, I'm sure you had a better time Thursday night than a lot of folks did here in town. We'll get to a guy who's having a great start, and then we have to figure out how a sad story is going to come to an end. Coming up next, Sean Nerney, Carlos Medina, Home Team, College Game Day live from Sports and Social here in the Battery, Atlanta on the Fan, 680, 93.7 FM.
Get the latest news.
All right, so we're going to need to be out at 58.
Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook.
By following @680TheFan.
Black Friday savings continue through Monday at Ace. Visit acehardware.com to get your coupon for 15% off your entire purchase, in-store or online. Whether it goes under the tree or into a stocking, our best brands always make the best gifts. So bring in your list and save big with 15% off your entire purchase, in-store or online, Saturday through Monday. Must present coupon or redeem. Offer valid at participating stores and acehardware.com on regular priced items. Limit 1. Exclusions apply.
Pecans. They're a part of every holiday dinner in the South. There's nothing like the sweet, buttery crunch you'll find at Stone Mountain Pecan. They're great treats by themselves and perfect for holiday baking. Don't have time to bake? Try our Just Nuts tin for a tasty variety of chocolate nuts for your guests. You'll also find tons of other nuts and candies at Stone Mountain, like our praline pecans. Plus, we're a great one-stop shop for all your gift giving, and we ship anywhere. Go nuts this year and place your order at stonemountainpecan.com or visit us on Highway 78 in Monroe. And don't forget, eat well, be happy.
Hey Bulldog fans, Georgia United Credit Union now offers Georgia Bulldogs debit cards. Now you can show your UGA pride everywhere you go and spend. Pick your favorite design and score yours today.
All right, guys, we're out at 58.
Making easy, friendly, and smart for busy members. Attack the day with a free checking account that pays big interest. It's the smart choice.
Wow, what time?
GUC
58.
Okay.
Music is 20 seconds.
Account information. Insured by NCUA. Georgia United, the official credit union of Georgia Athletics.
Peachtree. It is the lifeblood of Atlanta. In all its names is the thread that connects us.
All right, I owe you one more scoreboard. I'll hit that coming in.
Beautiful.
And then we'll go out.
And then you're all set, yeah. 20 seconds is music.
All right. 4-point game.